Hi Dennis, sorry about the shut off. Actually, the phone overheat. The overheated seems wrong, but it's the correct English. Sorry, I went off. Let me just wait a little bit for a little more people to come on. So today we are talking about going to be talking about two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive system in the cars that we have today, and we try to understand the differences of these cars. And I have an illustration. I have an illustration of the same. Where did it? Yeah. I have an illustration of the same. Hi, Vincent. So I started this broadcast before this, and then the phone did overheat, and then I had to go off. So we're going to be talking about two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and all-wheel drive. Okay. And majority of the cars that we have on Ugandan roads today are two-wheel drive. Okay, that's majority. Now, most of or even all government vehicles are four-wheel drive. Okay, and yeah, I'm just trying to draw some. I'm not a very good drawer, but I have some here for illustration purposes. So yes, now I know you can see. So we have the front two-wheel drive cars. Now two-wheel drive cars also have two versions. Okay, now a normal car has four wheels, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, hence the coining of the statement 4x4. Okay, now if it says 4, the 4 is not clear. If it says 4x4, it means 4 out of 4 wheels are powered. Now there are cars that have 6 tires like lorries, so it will be 4x6. If it has 10, then it will be 4x10. Hey Kenneth, 4x10. So the 4 stands for the number of tires that are powered, and then the 4 stands for the number of wheels that actually the car has. So it can actually have more than 4 wheels, you get. And sometimes it can be 2x4. And then that's where the coinage comes, all-wheel drive. Let's just try to see the difference here. Now, this is my normal car. Now, this is my Corolla. You're going to forgive my drawing skills. Most of the two-wheel drive cars that are front-wheel drive have engines that are like this. They are not longitudinal. This is transverse. I'm guessing this is transverse, and then this is longitudinal. Now, front-wheel drive cars have their engines put in transverse. Okay, now, and what happens, the engine powers the transmission or the gearbox, and the gearbox powers these two front wheels. Now, when they tell you that a car is front wheel drive, it means only the 2 tires in front are powered. Now, mark you, these are the 2 tires that actually have a steering wheel as well. Okay, so if they tell you that a car is front wheel drive, the engine powers the gearbox, and the gearbox powers the 2 wheels in front. So it has 2 driving shafts here. The rear tires have nothing. They don't have power. They are just there to support the car. Now, when they tell you that a car is rear wheel drive, a rear wheel drive car, normally their engines are put in longitudinal. It faces from front to back. Okay, and it powers, the engine powers the gearbox powers moves the propeller shaft. I'm sure you've heard of that. And then the propeller shaft gives power to the rear wheels. Okay, now the rear wheels, they push This one pulls, this one pushes. Okay, the rear wheel tires actually push the car. Okay, now let's just get an example of which cars we have in Uganda that are let's say rear wheel, front wheel. Now front wheel drives, Primos are front wheel drives. My Corolla, front wheel. Toyota Alex, front wheel. The Wish, front wheel. Mercedes-Benz has most of these cars as rear wheel drives. I'm going to tell you why soon. But majority of the Toyotas we have on the road today in Uganda are actually front wheel drive cars. You find that the engine is put in like this. Even the upper is a front wheel drive. Now you'll find that most of the Toyotas that we have on the road today, their engines are put in like this. Okay, it powers the front wheels, and then the front wheels pull the car. Okay, now some Toyotas that are rear wheel include the Mark II. The Mark II has the engine like this. If you can go and look at it, it's put in longitudinal. The Mark X, okay, of course the Mark X engine is quite big, so it's very hard for you to notice that it's actually longitudinal, but it is. Most lorries are rear. All lorries, by the way, all lorries are rear wheel drives, and their engines are put in like this. The Toyota Noah, the engine is like this because all Noahs are rear wheel drives. That's why you find that if it's not rear wheel drive, it's 4-wheel drive, and you have this sort of button for you to press to put it into 4-wheel drive. Okay, now that's two differences: front wheel drive, rear wheel drive. Okay, it's important that you understand the difference before you go to buy a car. Now the front wheel drive car is first of all cheaper to make for car makers. That's why majority of the cars we have on the road are front wheel drives. It's very cheap for you for the manufacturer to make front wheel drive. Do you know why? Because look at this car. It has less parts, right? Engine, transmission, the wheels that drive. And even maintaining this car is very cheap. Very few things are going to be maintained because it has less parts. Whereas with the rear wheel drive, it has the engine, the transmission, then it has a propeller shaft. Then sometimes you'll find that it has a transfer here, then it has driving shafts here, then it also has driving shafts here. It has other connectors, other bushes, other butaimbwas behind here. So a rear wheel drive car is quite expensive to maintain compared to the front wheel drive. But I'm sure you've had the difference. One way for you to know if a car is rear wheel drive is you look down and you see if it has a propeller shaft. If it has a propeller shaft from under the car, if it has this thing, just know it's a rear wheel drive. Now, why are cars? Let's just talk about the rear wheel drive cars. Mercedes-Benz, most of them, all of them actually, all the Mercedes-Benzes I've seen are rear wheel drive. Mark II, Toyota Crown, most of the Toyota luxury vehicles are Chaser, rear wheel drive. Mark II, rear wheel drive. Alphard, rear wheel drive. Now, what's so special about the rear wheel drive that some of those cars, luxury vehicles, are created to be rear wheel drives? Now, a rear wheel drive car takes more load because remember the power comes from behind. I think that it's behind where you put most of the load. So that's why most of the cars that are commercial are actually rear wheel drive. Look at all the lorries. They all have propeller shafts. All of them, the rear tires push or drive the car. You get. But for most of the cars that we drive, if you drive kids to school, take yourself to work, they are front wheel drives. Now, advantages of the front wheel drives, of course, they are cheaper to maintain, cheaper for the car makers to make. That's why they are even cheaper for you to buy. You get. The other thing is that they consume less fuel because everything is driven in the same place. Engine, transmission, down. The rear wheel drive drives the engine, transmission, then propeller, then tires. You get. Also, the advantage of the front wheel drive cars is that they have more grip. That's why you find that majority of the time it's either a Mark II, Mercedes Benz, although Mercedes Benz is easy to one, but Mark 2 is a Mark X. Okay, this is because they are rear wheel drive, and normally in the boot there is nothing. So yet for the front wheel drive, already the engine has put pressure on the tires, so the tires have bigger, more traction. So it's important for you to understand before you buy a car that do you live in an area where it's slippery, go for front wheel drive, don't go for rear wheel drive. Okay, but of course, if you're the kind of person that is cautious about how much you spend on fuel, front wheel drive cars are better for you. Yeah, so that's why you find that majority of the fuel efficient cars are front wheel drive, Passo, Primo, Probox. You get most of those rear wheel drive cars, you'll find that people are scaring using your nyama footer. Why? They use a lot of power to move. But also you'll find that rear wheel drives are faster than front wheel drives. You go and look at all race cars, they are rear wheel drive cars. Look at the fastest cars in the world, they are all rear wheel drive cars. The Mercedes Benzes are rear wheel drives. The Subarus, before they became all wheel drive, they used to be rear wheel drive cars. The BMWs of this world, rear wheel drive. Why? Because rear wheel drive cars, because it's being pushed, it has a lot of force to go forward. So it is very fast. Even the startup is quite fast. I might have to do this broadcast shorter than normal. I don't feel very well. I'm on medication. Yeah, I actually almost forgot this broadcast. Then I have a guardian angel that came to my inbox and reminded me. I was falling asleep. Yeah, but we're going to finish the content that I plan to finish, although it will be quite quick for me to go and rest. So front wheel drive, fuel efficient, easier to maintain, more common on the road. Okay, rear wheel drive, not fuel efficient because it uses a lot of power. It has a lot of, actually rear wheel drive cars are even heavier. Hi Martha. The rear wheel drive cars are even heavier than the front wheel drive cars. So if you live in places like where I live, where when it rains it's slippery, don't buy a rear wheel drive car. And I've told you the easiest way for you to see a rear wheel drive car is to look under the car. If you see a propeller shaft, that kind of ring that goes from front to back is what you see in the lorries, then don't buy that one. That's a rear wheel drive car. That's a luxury car. Those cars were created for speed, for comfort, for heavy lifting and all. I've told you the rear wheel drive cars lift more, that they lift a lot of load. That's why you'll find that most lorries, they are rear wheel drive cars. Actually all lorries. Why? Because the tires that are driving the car are closer to the load. What is the disadvantage of driving a car with a family wheel, a faulty wheel bearing hub? A friend of mine says his bearings make a lot of noise while driving. Now, when you have a faulty wheel bearing, a faulty hub, basically, in the beginning it really has no problem. It's just the bearing that has blown. But as time goes on, apart from the noise, it can actually push off the wheel. You get, because the bearing is in there, then the tire comes on. It can get to a time and it jams, it refuses to actually move. But most of the time, when the hub fails, you will change it, whether you like it or not. Because it gets to a time that, and it makes a lot of noise, to the extent that you think the gearbox is blown. Yet it's the hub. So tell him to change it as soon as he can. I understand that the hubs are very expensive. My hub is 185,000 last time I bought it. You get, and tell him not to change the bearings. That almost never works. Changing just the bearings. But if you're driving cars like mine, 2001 and above, just buy a new hub. You get, yeah, but it will make noise until he changes it. But sometimes it can even jam and the car can stop moving. And you know, when your car breaks down on the road, it will be very expensive for you to actually repair it. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have a question about the difference between front wheel and rear wheel drive. Now both these cars we are talking about are two-wheel drive. Now two-wheel drive cars are easier to maintain. They have less parts. Okay. Two-wheel drive cars are fuel efficient. But we also have now we have a very common we also, okay, this was for the rich people, for the guys cutting up a matter bagenda okuba ne farm. It's what we call, I'm trying to make sure this thing is cool. Samsung name is Ejayo. So it is, yeah, glad to see you, Jotham. Yeah, so Samsung zine bizibu byaze byoko overheating, so I'm trying to make sure it doesn't overheat, because when it overheats it will switch us off. So anyway, a bearing. Anyway, Simon, you see the tire. I think I've lost already a pen. Ompira gwe moroka, Simon, just to make sure that we understand ourselves. This is a question that has been brought by one of us here. Let me see. Okay, guys. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay. I just have to make sure that this phone doesn't overheat. When it took me off last time because it overheated. Yeah. So someone here asked, Moses asked Simon, just to be clear, Moses asked the disadvantage of having a faulty wheel bearing. Of course, the biggest disadvantage is that it makes a lot of noise. But just to make sure that Simon understands what this is, oino mupira go on. Okay, this is a tire. It's connected to the gearbox. Okay, waliwano babita bunege bukwatamu chikopo. There is something that they call a cap in Uganda. Here we call it a cap. Now that cap goes to the gearbox. Okay, now this kakono comes from here. It also has something that connects to something that is called a hub. Okay, now that hub has bearings in there. It's the hub that the tire moves on. I don't know if you guys are seeing this. Oh, now you see it. So waliwo akatayimbwa kagata ku gearbox. Okay, now it comes out of here, then it comes and connects to what we call a hub. The hub is in here, and in the hub there is a bearing. Okay, now when the bearing is okay, the tire can move fluently. Okay, it moves. Now when the bearing stops, okay, the wheel starts to struggle to move. That's when they tell you the hub is faulty, so you need to change the hub. Okay, so probably Moses, the other disadvantage of having a faulty hub is probably you'll experience bad fuel consumption. I don't know if it makes sense. Until when your hub is faulty, your fuel mileage will go down. Why? Because the wheel where the hub is faulty will actually struggle to move. I hope it's clear. Simon, the hub aids the wheel in moving, because the hub has the bearings in here. Okarabye baba kati ka bearing kabeera omwo munda mu hub. And I was telling Moses Adams, it's better that you replace the entire hub. Don't put just the bearing, because it almost never works just replacing the bearing. Okay, the phone is almost cool. So we have covered the two-wheel drive. That's the most common drive terrain here in Uganda. How about buying a full hub containing all the steering rack? That might be expensive, because if your steering rack has no problem, there is no reason to replace it. The steering rack has you just buy the hub. Just buy the hub. Just buy the hub. So we have covered two-wheel drive system, two-wheel drive terrain, and we said we have the front wheel and then rear wheel drive. Kakati, along the way, abazungu abakole moroka, they were getting innovative and they were thinking to themselves, okay, now that we have those front wheel and rear wheel drive, we have people that drive probably off-road, and they had also snow. Okay, they drive Jukira Baba Zungu, they have snow. And the rear wheel drive, especially the rear wheel drive, has a very big problem. Okay, in snow, in mud, in slippery conditions, you get. So that's when they started creating four-wheel drive. Now there are some There are some front wheel drive cars like the RAV4s. The RAV4 is a front wheel drive car. Okay, it's a lighting issue, guys. The phone tries to adjust it. The RAV4 is okay. Come on, phone. The RAV4 is a front wheel drive car. Okay, but being a front wheel drive, it still sometimes has a propeller shaft, and so it can connect nefuka ya 4-wheel. The same thing happens with the Toyota Ipsum. It's also front wheel drive, but it also has a propeller shaft if it's a 4-wheel drive car, and it makes 4-wheel. Now what happens with 4-wheel drive cars is that you can drive in the normal 2-wheel. If it's like trucks, they are 2-wheel 4-wheel drive, but they have rear wheel, they have a rear wheel powered drive terrain. So when it's not in 4-wheel drive, it's in 2-wheel and it's powered by the rear wheel drive, rear wheels. So it just pushes itself. Now when you get to a place where it's slippery, you either push a button or push a gear lever and you put in 4-wheel drive. Now the normal 4-wheel drive cars we know are the Land Cruisers, the Toyota Hilux, the Mitsubishi L200. Those trucks and SUVs normally are 4-wheel drives. Okay, they are normally 4-wheel drive system. Just give me a minute. Give me a minute, guys. Okay, this thing is actually now not responding. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Why it's not responding. So I'm glad it's clear, Simon. So 4-wheel drive cars were created to give the cars more power during slippery conditions, during muddy conditions, when you're off-road, probably going up hills, against your Monsico. That's why they created the 4-wheel drive system. The 4-wheel drive car was never created to be driven. The 4-wheel system was never created to be driven all the time. As a matter of fact, 4-wheel drive cars consume more fuel. You see, the front wheel drive, 2-wheel drives consume less fuel. But front wheel drive cars consume even less fuel, less than the rear wheel drive. Why? The rear wheel drive cars have more spare parts. So is tower. But now the 4-wheel drive car atebeera spare mungi okusinga zino eza 2-wheel. So enywamu ku mafuta. However, for you to save fuel, bobo jivuga on probably you're in a highway, you're in a normal road, on a normal road, drive it in 2-wheel. Make sure that it's in 2-wheel. Today, I installed the tracker in one of my followers' cars here. Thank you very much, brother, for the business. And it's an X-Trail. I tell you, you can switch it to 2-wheel, you can switch it to auto, where automatic means the car can decide whether to engage 4-wheel or 2-wheel. Or you can switch it to 4-wheel full time. Okay? Now, why they have that button is because they know 4-wheel drive will consume your fuel, it will drag the car, and there's something that is called binding. When you put 4-wheel drive, a 4-wheel drive car is almost like a rear wheel drive. Let me just show you. You see how a rear wheel drive car is? In 4 wheels, there is something called a transfer box. Okay? Now that transfer box, when you're driving your car and you engage 4-wheel drive, when it's in 2-wheel, let's start with 2-wheel. If it's rear wheel drive, if it's 2-wheel, only these 2 wheels back tires are powered. When you press the button to engage 4-wheel drive, the transfer box will lock and will put even the front tires. So it will have 4 tires moving at the same speed. Now some trucks kumipira kuno with some trucks. Okay, I have to adjust the light with the phone as well. With some 4x4s, they have a lock here on the tires. I hear 4x4s have types, some weak, some strong. For example, in the Mitsubishi Pajero IO X-Trail versus in the Land Cruisers. And yeah, it's obviously, but like we always say here, it's not popular by mistake. It's not a mistake that a Land Cruiser is very popular. People have over time revolved. They have learned these cars, how these cars work, and they learned that okay, the Land Cruiser is stronger than these Pajeros. You get it? People have learned, because when you look at the Land Cruiser and the Pajero is much more luxurious than the Land Cruiser. bw'ogitulamu Pajero n'otulamu Land Cruiser omanya nti Pajero you get. But that is something for you to discover for yourself. Like I always tell you guys, when you see a car that is popular on the road, just know it's not popular by mistake. Chitegeza, there is something good about it. So you don't see that the Land Cruiser is popular and you can afford it and you go buy a Pajero, which is not popular. There is a reason why Pajero is not popular. In the 90s, it was all about Pajero. Government had got Pajeros, but now they drive a Land Cruiser. There is definitely something there for you to not ignore. So like I said, a four-wheel drive, what we call a transfer box in the middle, down there in the middle of the car, but down. When you press four-wheel, it engages either the rear or the front wheels. No longer you have locked. All the four tires are traveling at the same speed. Okay? So if it has been driving on the two rear wheels, you lock and even the front wheels start moving. Now they all move at the same speed. So that's how the 4x4s, they don't get stuck when you're climbing uphill in a slippery road, because they get, actually when you put four-wheel drive, when you put a four-wheel, it even gets stronger on the road. What they call, it gets heavier on the road. You get. That's why it's not advised that you engage 4x4 when you're driving normally on the road. You get. So always remember that 4x4 is for driving in slippery roads. When you're off-road or that's when you engage 4x4, because you don't want to get stuck. When you engage 4x4, there are chances that you're going to spoil your transfer box or your gearbox. So when you're driving normally on the road, toteka mu 4x4 more kind of 4x4. Okujako, if the car is automatically 4x4 ngagwetolina chokola over the all-wheel drive, which we are going to cover shortly. Now, most people think that the four-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive are the same. No, my brother. Bianjaulo. Now, most Subarus on the road today are all-wheel drive. As the MPs of the Ziga, as the Subaru Foresters and Nenes, so they are all-wheel drive. Why these guys are creating all-wheel drive? I personally believe that in Uganda, I don't have energy. In Uganda, we don't need all-wheel drive. Do you know why? And it's a funny thing that most people that drive all-wheel drive, you never really need the all-wheel drive. Now, all-wheel drive is an automatic system that was created, that the car itself has a computerized system that senses, it basically moves all the four tires at once, okay? Four-wheel full time. But I'm not going to call it four-wheel drive full time, because it's totally different. When you say four-wheel drive, it means all the four tires are moving at the same speed, right? But all-wheel drive, but they never move at the same speed. The computer in the car senses and decides which wheel to give much more power than the other. Chitegeza, your car can have four tires, but the computer senses that the front tire is struggling to move. Then it gets most of the power, puts it in the front driver side tire, and then it moves. So it's too computerized. You really don't have to do anything, but the computer does. The computer senses that, oh, we are sleeping, the car is sleeping, and then it gives power to the tire that is actually sleeping at that moment. So it's almost a four-wheel drive, but it's not four-wheel drive. Let me tell you this. All-wheel drive is not a replacement to four-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive will always be in a league of its own. That's why they put it that it's never full-time, that you never leave the car to think for itself, because it's too powerful. When you engage four-wheel drive, the car gets a lot of power. It gets heavy on the ground. And it grips the ground for it to move. This is one reason why abantu abasinga chebaita okulaawa. A car is four-wheel, and they take it out of the four-wheel system and they make it two-wheel, because we don't need it. Ipsums that were bought four-wheel drive full-time have been made into two-wheel drive. Why? Because we don't need four-wheel drive in Uganda. RAV4s are four-wheel drive, but they are front-wheel drive, so it's possible makanika asobola ogiraawa kyebayita okulaawa n'agifuula two-wheel ng'esikira maaso. The same thing happens to Ipsums. So sometimes you'll buy an Ipsum that was a four-wheel drive, and now it's two-wheel drive. It doesn't affect it in any way. What they do is when they change the system, ebyemabega byonna byonna babijjayo byali ebya four-wheel ne bateekayo ebya two-wheel. You get what I'm saying? And then it will move normally like it has never even been a four-wheel drive. Why they do this is because four-wheel drive cars consume fuel. Why do they consume fuel? They are moving 4 tires. You get? You just imagine yourself, you move with 2 legs. Now imagine that you have to move with the legs and the arms. Do you know what that means? It means you'll use more energy, double the energy. That's what happens with four-wheel drive cars. Okay? That's why whenever your mechanic can kulawa this car, ajirawa na ajireka ku 2-wheel or saving ku mafuta. So when they say ipsams in your mafuta, ate ipsams of 4-wheel yebe in your mafuta. Watch, because they've got 4-wheel the way tag. So you're driving 4-wheel on a highway, Masaka Road, 4-wheel, watch it in your way. You get what I'm saying? The all-wheel drive system also all the time, but you'll find that we're in 4 tires, 2 front tires, 2 back tires. The all-wheel drive car, you'll find that sometimes it switches off the power from the at the rear wheel drive. It's powering the front wheel. That's why the all-wheel drive car will actually consume less fuel than a 4-wheel drive when 4-wheel is engaged. You get? But again, I'm going to make it clear. The only reason people in Europe and America have all-wheel drive cars is because they have snow. And when it snows in their countries, it does not discriminate places. It snows the entire country. So you need to have grip. And what better way than to have a car that is heavy on the ground? Because 4-wheel drive cars are already heavy, yet when you press the button to engage 4-wheel drive, you get what I'm saying? That's why Europe, China, Japan, they have all-wheel drive cars. You get? But for us here in Uganda, a front-wheel drive car is sufficient. The other thing you need to understand the difference between front wheel and rear wheel is that the front-wheel drive cars are okay, but the rear-wheel drive cars are more stable on the road. Probably the Mercedes-Benz is a rear-wheel drive. The front tires are reserved for steering. Amanya gasinga gava mabegeri. Oshitegira ebera stable on the road. Mark 2s, Mark X. When it comes to snow, Jeep, Land Cruiser, and Subarus are very strong four-wheel drives. Actually, most Subarus are all-wheel drives. Vianney. Oshitegira. So here in Uganda, omuntu ogula all-wheel drive oba four-wheel drive nga toyina farm togenda mu kyalo erudde oba oyonona kuba 4-wheel drive cars, all-wheel drive cars are very expensive to maintain. I take at these all-wheel drive, the Subarus. Moja tubulira years to come. Why? Because the Subaru, the new Subaru is 2014 and all. Everything that breaks down on a car, you have to bring a computer guy to diagnose and find out what's wrong. And everything that breaks down is very expensive. You get? So right now, for any person that is buying a car, always try. If it's a possibility that, for example, you'll find that Mark 2s, there are Mark 2s that are four-wheel drive. Go jagenda bagiguzenga tomanyo gule olozente oguzera isikumbe nyini yo ajejjeko lwa kunywa. Four-wheel drive cars consume fuel. All-wheel drive cars consume fuel. If my car right now, a liter takes me for 14-15 kilometers, because there are Corollas that are four-wheel drive, if you didn't know. There are Corollas like mine that are four-wheel drive. You find a Corolla like mine that is four-wheel drive, and it will be consuming a liter for like 9 kilometers. You get? You can see there's a difference of over 6 kilometers. You get? So it makes sense that in Uganda, you buy a two-wheel front-wheel drive car. Wish, Primo, Oppa, most Toyota sedans, hatchbacks, Alex, Auris, ICs, all those cars are front-wheel drive. The other advantage of front-wheel drive cars is that they have space. Zibane space nene. Now, that is something that probably is technical. But it has to do with the fact that the rear tires, spare parts because it has a diff behind, so the diff also takes some space. So especially the people behind in rear wheel drive cars, they don't have a lot of space to sit in. Why do Ugandans love Subarus yet they consume more fuel than Toyotas? Subaru is a trend. It's a trend. There was a time where people were putting on sunglasses even when it's raining. It's a trend, it will pass. Most young people now drive Subarus because I have a friend that's driving a Subaru. They don't really drive Subarus because Subarus give them peace or Subarus are nice cars. I'll tell you that a Toyota is much more comfortable than a Subaru. That's my opinion. My mechanic shares the same opinion. I thought I had something wrong thinking Subarus are not comfortable. Subaru jitulako banga atudde kabao. Come and sit in my Corolla. Otegere what comfort is anyway. But that's my opinion, guys. Not to get so excited because neddagala noli intwala. But I need you guys to understand that in Uganda, all-wheel drive car is good. Neighbor they are creating an all-wheel drive because they get snow. And their snow season is bad. Too bad. In the US, I think over 6 people died because of the snowstorm. You get it, they get to a point that during winter, some people don't actually work, or they work from home because getting from home to work is hard. That's why they created these all-wheel drive cars, because the all-wheel drive cars can actually move through all seasons. But I want you to understand one thing, that having an all-wheel drive car or a four-wheel drive car with bad tires is the same as having a front-wheel drive car with good tires. Nti ne bwoba ine motoka nga ya four-wheel ugitekeko emipiira emirungi at all times. Okitegeera. You need to understand that tires are as important as the drive terrain. You get, tires are as important as the drive terrain of the car. Okitegeera nti gwe ojja kubeera and Moses, banzijanjaba malaria natawona, so I'm on new medication, and I think this medication is stronger. That's why I have that issue. So we are still talking about two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, okitegeera. So, and of course, people like Subarus because it's a trend. There's a time that I liked Super Custom. Of course, I still have something that likes it. But now, my decisions are more logical. They are more logical than then. There are people that are buying Subarus because my brother bought a Subaru, so why don't I buy a Subaru? There are people that buy a Subaru because, well, all my friends are driving Subarus. Hi, Salmin. Then there are people that drive Subarus because they want to be they want to belong to a certain community. So you need to understand that Subarus, there is nothing really special about the Subaru. Someone has to come and educate me, but I don't see anything special about the Subaru apart from the fact that people drive it because it's the peer thing to do. It's the good thing to do for their age group, for the community they hang around with, their friends and all. Nenga bwobanga you're not the kind of person that goes with the trend, buy a car that makes the most sense to you. That's why I'm telling you, most Subarus right now are all-wheel drive. That is a nene. Why? Because they have winter seasons. And during the winter, cars sleep ziserera. Kati, never front wheel drive, never rear wheel drive. During their winters, they have that issue. That's why they created all-wheel drive. And they actually, like I've told you, all-wheel drive cars are computerized. The computer sensors decide which tire is actually having a problem, and they push more power to that tire. The all-wheel drive car can actually power one tire more than the other 3 tires. You get why? Because at that moment, this one tire is what has the biggest problem. You get what I'm saying? However, the four-wheel drive is much more powerful than the all-wheel drive car. That's why you'll find that there are no all-wheel drive pickups. There are no all-wheel drive pickups. All the pickups that do heavy lifting, heavy work, is a four-wheel. Tell us more about the types U, meaning on the Toyota Nadia. Is it really related to the wheel driving system or the type of engine? There are two-wheel drive Nadias, Jotham. There are 2-wheel drive Nadias and there are 4-wheel drive Nadias. I don't know why they decide to make it like that. Probably the people, the market demanded that they make a 4-wheel drive Nadia and a 2-wheel drive Nadia. But it really has nothing to do with the engine. The engine can still stay the same, but they just put a gearbox that powers four wheels. It really has nothing to do with the engine, because even my car can have my 1.5cc engine and they power it with a transmission that is 4-wheel drive. You get? So they have reasons why they actually make 4-wheel or not 4-wheel. But when you're buying, your decision should be totally and entirely based on reason. Why am I buying? Like if you are living 35 kilometers from town like me, you'd actually think about your options. You'd make sure you buy a car that has a small engine. Why am I saying that? Is because of the fuel expense. Which together, I personally use the same fuel like a person that lives in Kasangati and drives a Mark II. Why? Because my car is smaller. So if I went and started living in Kasangati, I would actually use half the fuel that he uses. But it's a reason-based thing. So it's important that we understand. The best car for the Ugandan market is actually the 2-wheel drive and front-wheel drive. Because even the rear-wheel drives nazo zinywa amafuta, because zine ebintu bingi nazo ziba zizitowa. Okitegeera fe abekazo Airtel tetufiiriddeko ddala. Nange ebadde ntawaanya Salmin. Airtel eswaza kyokka bayita smartphone network musimanya 4G. Baswaza maani, baswaza. Nange enswazaamu olumu nenzijjako n'okunzijjako. Ng'ate oguze data wa bbeeyi naye ne bakuggyako. Sorry about that, Salmin. But don't worry, you can always rewatch this. Oba wujjira wonna ng'okiyingira. Yeah, so, but we are getting into the new year, guys. I hope you guys have planned. Remember, goals and resolutions are two different things. I'm sure people say New Year's resolution. A resolution comes from the word resolve. You have resolved to say kakati, chino, come what may, I'm going to do it. You guys need to have goals and resolutions. Resolutions should be powerful. Arthur, does this mean that all-wheel and 4x4 need bigger engines? Yes, ebisinga 4-wheel drive cars ziba ne engine and zinywa n'amafuta mangi. That's why you'll find that all those pickups, all those Land Cruisers zibera 3000cc, 3400cc, 3500cc, 2800cc. Okitegeera. So ebyo ebintu bye batugambanga mbwe motoka za diesel tezinywa balimba. It's just that diesel was cheaper at that moment. But now diesel is more expensive than petrol. So, but more you go and research around all the pickups zirimu 2500, 2800, 3000, 3500 ezimu zina mu 10,000. The Hammers are 4-wheel drive. Actually, Hammers, I think Hammers were initially created for the army. Those guys bagenda Iraq and all, because the 4-wheel can actually go through the sand or the sand in the deserts. 4-wheel drive. So the Hammers were created for that purpose. But I think along the way, Obaba Amaje, the generals in the US, baringa bazivuga in normal life. So the company that created Hammer started creating domesticated kind of looking Hammers for everyday people. Naira hame hizo beri musisi nganku mitano. I'm not sure. That has to be verified. But I'm just saying that most of those cars that are 4-wheel drive are engine nene. The only reason in the past that it used to look like they were saving money was because diesel was cheaper. But right now, hey, sorry, someone was calling me. In Uganda, you don't need an all-wheel drive car. You don't need a 4-wheel drive car. That's wastage of resources in terms of fuel. That's wastage of resources in terms of repairs. A motoka ya 4-wheel ya beyo kukanika. A motoka, actually, you need a front-wheel drive car. Even a rear-wheel drive, a motoka eskire mabega. In the short run, but sorry, someone keeps calling me. Normally, when someone calls me and I make them busy the first time, I'm thinking they will guess that actually this person is actually busy. It's very hard for someone to make you busy when they are not. So, you in Uganda, the person that is, no, it's not your internet. Someone was calling me about Dantawanya. In Uganda, a person that is going to buy probably your first or second car, right now it's time that you get actually informed. Buy a car based on facts. You don't need a 4-wheel drive car. You don't need an all-wheel drive car. Front-wheel drive cars do it properly. Nze no jembeere nkuba bwetonye nnyingi ennyo enguudo zonna ziseerera. But mpitamu sina lwe nali nemedde wantu. I always go through properly. So front-wheel drive cars gwe kyokola kiri kimu, make sure the car has good tires. Okitegeera. Because the rear-wheel drive cars zinywamuko ku mafuta katonotono. That's why you find it's very rare to find a rear-wheel drive car that is less than 2.0 cc. The only manufacturer that has been able to do that is Suzuki, because the Suzuki Jimny is 4-wheel drive. Nainga ateri 1.4. Most Suzukis that are 4-wheel drive, ojazisanga ziri 1.5, 1.4. Suzuki has mastered that, but even Toyota has failed to master that. To make a 4-wheel drive car that is 1.5, tell you, even a Corolla like mine that is 4-wheel drive is 1.8. Ibamu engine nge ya Primo. So it's important that you understand that buying a 4-wheel drive will cost you. Is it really worth it? I've been telling you a story of a relative of mine that had a Noah, a very good Noah, najitunda agule double cabin, thinking that his farm will actually pick up. His farm has never picked up. Nenga atemoloka jiyagula ankadde, nesente ze yasamu tasobola kuzijjamu. It's a fact. So before you go ahead and think that it's trendy for you to have a 4-wheel drive car, before you think that maybe I need an all-wheel drive Subaru, think about the resale value. People in Uganda don't want to buy 4-wheel. Okujjako abagenda ne bazigula mu bondi, be bazigula blindly. Okay? Be bagula moroka ezo blindly. Also, mbadde njagala kano nkayiseewo so that we understand each other. Guys, when you're going to buy a car, go with someone that is trustworthy to inspect your car for you. The reason why I don't want to be too direct, but waliwo omuntu gwe baguzizza emmotoka ngenda okugituukako nga it's like the car had been parked for a year. But I think finally this person decided katujikanike tujitunde. So they fixed the car, painted it, okay, made it look nice, washed it, and they sold it to this person. Okay? Primo Super, are they front wheel drive? Yes, they are front wheel drive. And Primo Super UAW bajaji guza million 12, which I would not recommend, because at 12 to 13 million so okufuna Primo new model munambi nkadde kaddemu nenga ate Primo new model jakuba with a high resale value years to come. So bamuguzize motoka nkadde, it seems like it's sat. Like I've been telling you guys, waliwo motoka ezimu ezitawanya abantu ngemutawanya nasooka agiparking ewuwe. Finally nafuna makanika nga agitegeera namugamba giyiye tugitunde, and they sell you this car. Go with people that can inspect cars. People, may I offer my services, pre-purchase inspection? You don't have to go with me, but find someone that can actually do that job for you. I hope I'm clear. Don't go to buy a car with a mechanic you pick on the road. And sometimes avoid having a mechanic recommend a car for you, because when a mechanic recommends a car to you that they have been working on, a car that they know a friend of theirs has, sometimes you'll get problems, because these people know the entire history. No mechanic aba manyengeri yokutetenkanyamu emmotoka. It's a very good thing for you to get a car fresh from a place that the mechanic that is checking doesn't know. That's why I normally tell you, you round up your cars, pay me pre-purchase inspection fee, nzigenda bemoroka ezizo ezitali zange, and I pick the best out of those cars. If I find that all those cars that you have are not good, then I can actually give you my options. You get what I'm saying? Bagenda kuguze motoka envundu. And you know what's funny is that the car doesn't break down when we have just bought it. It takes some time, and when it starts breaking down, in our way, kurema. Guys, before you buy a car, inspect those cars. They should pay you, by the way, or else they will end up like the Murano guys. Tell me about the Murano. You told us about the Mazda, but the Murano tonajitugambako. Guys, I'm saying this, if you're watching this channel, you don't have to pay me pre-purchase inspection. Get someone else. But inspect cars. Make sure you go with the person amanyoko inspecting a motoka. Leave these mechanics that just check the engine and gearbox. People. Huh? Why are you burying money in Mulava? You find someone burying 10, 15 million because tayagadde kusasula mitwala na athaga yagala. By the way, starting today, pre-purchase inspection is 400,000. It's not 350K. You get 400,000 for pre-purchase inspection. The 400 covers me, covers the mechanic, covers the fuel, and covers our lunch as well. We take maximum 2 days to get you a good car if you're within the budget. No, you talked about those guys who picked you at the airport. Those ones. It was a Terrano, not Murano. Terrano. The Nissan Terrano. Now, you guys, I looked at this car and I thought to myself, my God, how can people be this heartless? You sell to someone a car that you clearly know you have just polished on the top. Guys, mechanics are bad. You know, you look at all these things, everything that is in the interior was polished. It was resprayed. The blacks were sprayed black. The silvers were sprayed silver. You get it? It was washed. The interior was washed. The body was resprayed. But then, I looked at this car and I even lost energy. But anyway, we all pay for our choices. That person will pay for their choice later on. But always make sure you inspect your cars. And don't buy a 4-wheel drive car unless you have a farm somewhere in Bukunjiri, somewhere in Nakasongo, and it's very slippery, and sometimes you need, because ogena kubo yono na mafuta manji when you don't need. And like I tell you guys, try as much as possible to not buy an SUV when you don't need an SUV. Okay? SUVs muzidekira ababede, abamalayo. If you're still a young person like me, okay, stick to buying these small cars. The biggest car you should go to should be a 2000cc car, okay, and let it be a Toyota. Why are Kenyans embracing Mazda like so in comparison? Okay, Moses Adams, I want us to understand one thing. Kenya, it's not good to compare Kenya to Uganda. Do you know why? For starters, Uganda is landlocked. Kenya is not. So Kenya gets spares faster than Uganda. So you'll find that the spare that we don't have here in Uganda is in plenty in Kenya. Why? Because Kenya is along the coast. Their spare. For you, for example, a car that takes 3 months to get to you, it will probably take a month to get to Kenya. So Kenyan traders, even the taxes in Kenya, might actually be lower than in Uganda. Kenyan businessmen find it easy to import things, to import spares and all. You'll find that the spare doesn't even have to go away from the coast. It stays there, Mombasa and all. And people come and buy the spare from there. Some people that have Nissans here in Uganda, they buy spare from Kenya. You'll find that in Kenya, these guys drive Nissan, they drive Mercedes-Benz, they drive all sorts of vehicles that we normally don't drive in Uganda because of spare parts. Why? Because they are along the coast. They are not landlocked. So spare is very easy for them to get. You get it? So it's as simple as that. So if you're a young person like me, I always recommend it's passion. The decision is passion based. That I'm really passionate about the Volkswagen. I'm really passionate about the Mercedes-Benz. I'm really passionate about the Mazda. Guys, don't just buy those cars. You get it? Yeah, Kenyan market is full of all brands because for them, it's easy for them to source anything. Unlike us, at FNA, you'll get a spare part. It will pay tax in the country of origin. You'll probably pay some tax in Nairobi or Mombasa. Then you still pay tax in Uganda. And the taxes here are too high on things. So you'll find that sometimes it's just not worth it. It's a passion-based car. It's a second car or third car that you drive over the weekend. Yeah. So stick to Toyotas for now, guys. But that's my opinion. You don't have to stick to Toyotas. You can't stick to. Your network so guys, I'm thinking we have covered the 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. You know the difference now. 2-wheel drive, either the 2 front tires or the 2 rear tires. And I've said, of the 2-wheel drive, buy the front-wheel drive in Uganda. It works perfectly for us. You get. 4-wheel drive, I've said the 4-wheel drive, it's very rare to find a 4-wheel drive that has full-time. 4-wheel drive either has a gear lever here that commands the transfer box to put into 4-wheel drive, or it has a button. But then the all-wheel drive cars are automatic. It's the computer that decides that, okay, let me put all 4 tires, let me put more power on 1 tire, let me put more power on 2 tires, or let me just reduce the power on one or all of those tires. So I hope you guys understand the difference. Sorry, my networks today came for German cars. Always use the same mechanic as they will build a history with the car. Yes, naye waliwo ababbi nagivugako emmotoka y'omu Germany naye mechanic can steal your money. Yeah? Can take your money like he was like if you are a tree for money. German cars. Probably I need someone that has had a good experience of German cars to actually give me an interview at AllWheel, because the only interview that we have of German cars was a very bad experience from Council Yunus, and for him he says what the lawyer tayinza kuddamu gula moroka ya German okujjako ng'agiguze yakubiri oba yakusatu. I also had a similar experience with a German car, so it's very hard for you to convince me that sticking with the same mechanic can actually, because it's like German car mechanics are full of evil. You get, probably because they are few. But I have a Benz mechanic that I trust. Naida na yakugamba buy a Benz at the second car, and my friend is a really close friend, so he would be honest. So I was saying there's no reason why a Ugandan young person is buying an all-wheel drive car, because you don't need all-wheel drive. But one thing you need to understand: all-wheel drive cars are actually more stable on the road. Stable because they have grip on all 4 tires. So if you're the kind of person that do Kenyo, 4-wheel drive will actually, all-wheel drive, not 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive cars will actually work better for you. But the kind of person I got to smoke the tires, to drift, the all-wheel drive car doesn't do drifting. So it's better than a church money. It's the car that is perfect for drifting is the rear-wheel drive car. That one is perfect for drifting. Also, the front-wheel drive for drifting is not very good. You get. So I have to go, guys. I don't feel very well. Malaria being the medication Jamampe Yasokati Yakola. So malaria actually came back. But this medication that I was given, I think it's too powerful. It's making me very weak. But thank you very much for being part of this. Has the broadcast helped you? Have you learned something? And like I always say, me, I speak what I think is good for you. So don't buy a 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Okuja ngo ina sente. Ekisoka zinywa nnyo amafuta, ekyokubiri tozeetaaga. Okitegeera. You'll find that even when you go to villages, in a road that is really bad, even 4-wheel drive cars will get stuck. You get a road that is fairly okay, 4-wheel drive cars will go, but 2-wheel drive cars will also go. You get. So I don't see a reason why someone should be driving an all-wheel drive car. So just buy 2-wheel drive, but front-wheel drive, and you'll be good. You get. Me, I will take you in 2024 as a deal. Okay, that's good. MBI Garage has only all Land Rovers. Why? Because he's a specialist in Land Rovers, Salmin. He's a specialist in Land Rovers. Yeah. There are some mechanics that are specialists, but also specialist mechanics in Uganda are specializing because he's a specialist. There is nowhere you're going to run to. He's the best in that thing. So katwaba mubya akubirawo. Bulungi nnyo. But the guy at Sao Paulo, he's a specialist in Land Rover. I've seen that garage. But I also know Land Rovers that he failed to fix. Yeah, when I lived in Kasangata, I know 2 people that were repairing from his garage, and their Land Rovers completely sat down. So avoid buying passion cars. You get. So that's my advice. Thank you very much, Charles. You were in the previous broadcast. Dennis, Vincent, Moses, Martha, Jotham, Simon, Vianney, Salmin. Yeah, Abby. Yeah, and even the guys that are in Kamoli, it means a lot. You guys take the time to watch my broadcasts. Yeah, it would. Yeah, Salmin is passionate about Land Rovers. Na ye, soko ze sonyewezo, soko koleka sento weze. You have 3 cars in the compound, then you can buy Land Rover. You have 2 cars in the compound, you can buy a Benz, which take or you can buy a Golf. Yeah. I tell you, if you live far away from the city, avoid those German cars and those English cars. Gula Japan, gula Toyota. Like me, The only way I would buy a Mercedes Benz is if, for example, I was campaigning for mayor, or if it's a second or third car. But guys, thank you very much. It really means a lot that you take the time to come and watch my broadcast. Don't forget, guys, I do pre-purchase inspection. If you're going to buy a car, I can come and help you select the best car of all the cars you have seen. Mechanically, okay, it has to be good. Even paperwork has to check out, but even it has to be a good deal. Techikuyamba gula motoka milioni 15 nga waligiguze 10. That's why you need me okuyambako to guide you. Okitegeera. Like I say, I give free consultation. You don't have to come to my inbox to lie to me. Ata inchangenda kujja nkwesente pre-purchase inspection. So katoko ombulire. People use you can consult me without saying Arthur ngenda kuwasendeza pre-purchase inspection tomorrow ojje tugende tukebere kakati soko mbulire ku primo ne gundi inguleki. When you're actually already buying, you can ask me freely without lying about your intentions. You can just ask me straightforward. Ata mpa ku magezi mbadde ngenda gule moroka eno nene eriwe singa, and I'll gladly advise you without you having to promise anything. You get I've done that before. I'll continue doing it. Waliwo abantu abagira nga atuse ku moroka zagenda ogula na kale nja kujja nkugambe. So you don't actually have to lie to me from me in other ways if you don't give me pre-purchase inspection. But don't forget, guys, and relatives, so that they don't make me ekyogula emmoroka eri mu condition ennungi tekitegeeza nti you have a good deal. Ojja gigula milioni 10 nga waliwo inagigula 7 otuuka okugitunda nga bakuwa 5 otandika okugamba oba kiki oba luwandoga naye nga teridala kuloga you bought poorly. I also sell tracking devices. We have 2 types of tracking devices. One that doesn't enable you to call and listen to the people in the car. That one is 350,000. And then we have another type where you can call and listen to the people in the car, whatever they are planning, at 450,000. Those are, I also sell car alarm systems at 200,000. Yeah, don't forget to give me business. Share this channel with your friends. Share the videos that you see on this channel with your friends and relatives, so that they also get this free information that is available to them. So that they don't make mistakes. I wish you a very happy new year. Nange munsabire zigenda wera sana mukaga nga namusera musemuko. Have a very happy entrance to 2023. I'll see you in 2023, by the way, because kati muguno 2022 nyinza obutaddamu balabako. Nja kuddamu balaba omwaka ogujja. See you next year, guys. Ciao.